Welcome back to Limitless Latina, a podcast that debunks stereotypes, unpacks traumas, and empowers those in our community. I'm Valerie Razo.
And I'm Estefania Cano.
And this is Limitless Latina.
Guys, it's so exciting to have you back. We have a very special guest today, Kathryn Harvey.
A woman that needs no introduction, the girl boss herself.
But just so you know a little bit about her, she is a Spartanburg native. She has more than a decade of experience with family-centric brands like the MLB and Sesame Street. She also founded her own marketing firm, New South Collective, where she's been helping nonprofit organizations across the upstate.
And as if that wasn't enough to put on her resume, she's also been working tirelessly for the past 2 years with the Spartanburg County Democratic Party to mobilize voters across the state.
Kathryn, welcome to Limitless Latina.
Thank you for having me, both of you. This is awesome.
We want to dive right into your childhood. We know that two of the most important people in your life, your parents, were part of special education, and that education has always been a cornerstone of your life. So we want to dive into who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. I'm born and raised here, not far from where we're sitting right now. I grew up in public school district 7, so I've been in public school my whole life. And my parents taught in that school district. They were actually one of the first class of special educators that were brought to South Carolina in the 70s. They're from Virginia and met in college at William & Mary and went to school for special ed and got to start at Spartanburg together. Public schooling and education is just at the core of our whole family. And candidly, I think the basis of education as an accessible entity for all, and certainly high quality education, is the basis for a thriving community.
How do you think that your childhood and you being part of, or education being part of your life throughout your entire trajectory has influenced your decision to go into politics?
I think it's twofold. One, I had the great fortune of a career that focused on children's education. So left here, went to NYU, immediately went into advertising and was working for major brands, but on the philanthropic side of their work. And then ended up going into the client side, which is the global nonprofit behind Sesame Street. So I had the gift of working in a leadership role for one of the most well-known brands in the world. It works globally on some of the toughest challenges facing children under 5. And at the core of that, it's access to quality early childhood education.
And speaking of all of the initiatives you did at Sesame Street, I think that it would be important for them to know about WASH.
Well, I think for the WASH initiative, a lot of my role was actually working within partnerships on the ground. So my team got to expand a water, sanitation, and hygiene initiative at the Sub-Saharan Africa that had been piloted in India and a couple other countries. And what we saw is that a behavior change program is most well led by children. It's the same thing if you think about how our dental care became important in this country. It's because we were able to market to children to teach them good habits, and then they took those good habits home. So the impetus of it was, if we can use the Muppets to bring good hygiene habits and teach children in more rural populations at school, they will then in turn take those behaviors back to their homes. Mm-hmm. And then working with partners to provide the infrastructure, so running water, etc. It was the education piece of it that had been missing. And so you kind of take that same model and bring it to any area of challenge, whether it's children facing homelessness, children facing financial insecurity, food insecurity. It's about creating that lexicon of language where children and parents can talk about a tough issue, and then you provide an opportunity for them to work on it together using these methods. And so I think a lot of that for me is bringing that work back home. I mean, it's a huge part of why I ran everything that I worked on before I moved back is right here in South Carolina. We have the same challenges facing our working families. And for me, education's at the core of that. We have wonderful public education systems in this area. We're a 7-college town. You know, there's so much opportunity right now for young people, but we could be doing more. And certainly growing up with 2 teachers in the household, I saw how hard my parents worked. I'm pretty sure my mom pulled 12 hours a day every day she was in that role, because she woke up with those babies and she went to bed thinking about them. Teachers wear so many hats, and I think that's only increased in today's climate.
Absolutely. I mean, being a teacher definitely influences a lot of people's futures. I mean, for me, there's always that one teacher that really impacts your life. And I'm sure your parents were definitely that for a lot of people.
It's actually really fun being home because their students still recognize them, like when we're out in public or at the movie theater or things like that. And I just think that's really special. I have that teacher, you have that teacher, you have that teacher, you never forget it.
And one of the legislation points that a lot of citizens in Spartanburg County are pushing for is being able to increase wages for our teachers and finding strategies to make sure that our teachers stay, because we have seen a huge dropout in that career sector because of the low wages that we have
The
here.
state has seen an incredible exodus of teachers, and it's really hard to watch, to be honest. And teachers just got a raise, but that raise was supposed to happen 11 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're still not at like market rate. I think at the end of the day, though, our teachers should be lifted up like the gold that they are for our community. And by and large, the majority of our Republican legislators and certainly our congressperson is just making it harder for them.
You did mention that there were several ways to improve. In your opinion, what are those ways that we could improve the education system here in Spartanburg County and Greenville County?
At the core, our schools should be safe. And that's something that we can begin to tackle at the federal level. There's opportunities certainly to increase safety in schools without making it more unsafe, which I think some of these suggested policy shifts, arming educator, all of these things just seem like it would be exacerbating. I really think there's a moment where we are looking at common gun sense rules, regulations, applying that to what's happening in our schools. And at the end of the day, we have to be funding mental health in schools. There's just been such a shift. When I started at Sesame Street, it was the beginning of the digital revolution. And truly, it was 2008. iPads had just come out and kids were just starting to use them. So we were studying what screens were doing to children, how they were reacting to them, how it was shifting brain chemistry. And you think about now, like 8-year-olds have cell phones. You're just constantly bombarded. All of that impacts how children are learning in schools. It also impacts their mental health. And not just that, there's a range of determinants, right? But if schools are becoming this catch-all where your teacher is sometimes your parent, sometimes your counselor, schools should be your safe space. And we have to have those wraparound services to support our students in that safe space. And here in our state, we're pulling funding from schools, which is just criminal. There has to be so many other ways that we can be going about this that aren't harming our students or educators or candidly our families. Where I stand on a federal level, I do think keeping our schools safe is paramount. And honestly, if we look at the 360 approach to what a whole family looks like, what families need to succeed, we have to make sure that the upstate is affordable for families, right? That looks like, it's not just education. It looks like attainable housing, affordable healthcare. It looks like fighting corporate greed so prices lower on all the things family needs, from getting your kid to school with a full tank of gas to buying groceries to school supplies. I mean, all week I've been thinking about how many families were so stressed out just trying to get their kids back to school and keep food on the table and keep medicine in the cabinet. It is an unbelievable time for working families with everything just pulsating at the same time, yet we aren't giving them in many cases, the livable wage they need to be able to meet the needs of the family. We're definitely not meeting their healthcare needs. And we have to equip the school to catch all of these things and juggle
so
them.
many dynamics.
It is. And I really do. I mean, I feel this in my heart. It's criminal how politicized our education system has become. The taxing nature of what, candidly, these culture wars are doing to our administration, they're doing to our educators. It's just enough is enough. This doesn't change until our politics change. And that's a huge part of why I'm running.
So you dived into two different points that we really want to navigate in. The first one is you mentioned the wages and you mentioned affordable housing.
Sure.
Right now, a lot of our housing is about $250,000 for anyone who wants to buy a home. If you're a first homeowner, what are some of these policies or initiatives that you would like to tackle to be able to help these marginalized communities that want to really immerse in that American dream that they came here for?
Sure. The beautiful thing is there are opportunities for exactly like that community. We have coalitions of partners working on it here in Spartanburg County, right? It's accessing it.
Mm-hmm.
How are we informing folks about it? How are they absolutely accessing it from the populations we're discussing today? There's funding out here for all of this, guys. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Our current congressman has refused it, has voted against it, has done everything he can to stop the help from coming. That's really where I sit right now. And I'll be candid with you. For more than half a decade, I've worked in this community on the ground with nonprofit partners who are serving the least of us. There is federal funding out there for every single one of these core issues. You have to have somebody who's bringing home the bacon. And if the person who is representing you isn't even showing up in your community, how in God's name are they going to serve their constituents?
Absolutely.
And it is across the board. And so then you have these coalitions of private-public funding, of your local governments trying to pull together to create these safety nets to catch all of these things because our representative isn't doing his damn job.
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science. It's actually showing up for your community in ways that benefit them. And it hasn't happened in 6+ years under his leadership.
And one of the best ways that you will benefit the community is with healthcare initiatives. So can you tell us a little bit about the policies that you would like to implement if you were to win?
We have to be fighting to expand Medicaid, right? And we know that's on lock here in our state. Our governor just refused to even fund a committee to study Medicaid expansion. Like, it's all by design to keep people from moving forward. There's what can you do on the federal level, what can you do on the state level, but at the end of the day, your congressperson can put pressure on your state legislature for the work that they are doing to harm your community. That if we're really talking about what makes an upstate thrive with all of this economic development and all of this emphasis on creating a pipeline into the workforce, you have to be providing adequate family planning measures because the workforce and its success is the success of a family. And healthcare is at the core of that. And if we're not taking care of our kids here, taking care of our women here, taking care of our families here, how can you expect them to meet you on the other end as a good citizen, as a good worker, as a productive person in this community? And it's all there. We have like everything we need to succeed. We just need to have the representation who's unlocking it.
Now that we're on the topic of healthcare, we would love to hear how you would like to address a woman's right to choose, because we know the state isn't very friendly to a woman's right to choose.
So I have been working in the advocacy space slightly before Roe fell here in South Carolina with my nonprofit partners. So like a week before it fell, I had started with the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network, and everything dropped. And I had been with them for 2 years, truly fighting at the State House, running their strategic communications around Roe and how are we mobilizing communities, how are we fighting at the State House. I mean, everything under the sun. So it was being in the thick of it. Here's what I'll say. We have the most stellar advocates on our state level than any state in this part of the U.S. I feel that in my blood. The people that are advocating for these issues are incredible. So it's really hard to swallow that we have the 6-week ban, but we staved it off longer than any other southern state.
Yeah.
And they're still fighting, right? They're fighting to make sure it doesn't happen with access to IVF. They're fighting to make sure it doesn't happen with access to contraception. And I'm fighting for it too, because our current congressperson voted to block all of it. And it just goes back to, it's none of your damn business.
Yeah.
First of all, you're not a woman. You have no idea the decisions that we have to make day in and day out about our bodies and that we should be allowed to make. Number two, it is wholly detrimental to a society, period, at the end of sentence to control a woman's body. It is so archaic. And the idea that my niece has less rights right now than I did when I was her age,
It's insane.
is criminal to me. And then you go into marginalized communities who are already experiencing healthcare deserts. We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates of any state in the United States of America, and we are only making it worse by design. And a bunch of people are making decisions for us who don't know anything about our healthcare. And the only way to change that is to elect women into office. It truly is.
Yeah.
Or elect good people who are going to fight for women.
Well, we need to have people who represent the community we live in.
Correct.
And the first start would be someone who can empathize with a huge demographic, which is women.
Yeah. Who would have thought?
Majority female.
Yes.
But it's not reflected in our government.
Yeah. And it's not reflected in a lot of sectors, which, speaking of sectors, we have a lot of economic development coming in South Carolina. We have different kinds of sectors. And I want to know, how are we going to keep this state booming economically?
We have incredible leadership in this community. I mean, truly, when you get out of the partisan level of things, like, we work across sectors together to move our community forward. We still need support.
Yeah.
We still need help, and we could be doing better. I'll be honest with you. I've been home almost 10 years. I've seen a change in the trajectory of what our workforces look like. I think there's an intentional effort to be more inclusive, to lift younger folks up, to give more opportunities. You see it in business. It's moving here as well. But we have to keep our foot on the gas.
Yeah.
It's like what is possible in this area with the right representation. It's almost like the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
But having elected officials like William Timmons, who are actively holding our communities back, and just look at his voting record, just look at the policies he's aligning with. In a moment of economic boom, we literally can't afford 2 more years of him. And I'm all for smart growth. I'm all for our booming economy and taking care of our people at the same time. And it's possible. We have examples of it all across the United States. We can do this because we can do anything up here. But you've got to have the right people in place, meeting your community where it is, working with businesses to lift people up, to bring people forward. And again, we just have to have the right people in place.
And how do you want to go about putting the right people, a diverse set of the right people in the right places?
That's a really good question. So when I moved back, I had never even been to a city council meeting when I lived in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. My local level of political engagement was fairly low.
Mm-hmm.
I'd pop up for national presidential elections, et cetera, right? Got involved. And I came back here and I met a woman who's a dear friend of mine now, who is around my age on city council. And she's been a councilwoman for 12 years. I think she's one of the youngest people that ever joined council.
Nice.
And almost saw myself in local politics through her. There was a handful of other folks on there. You know, our city council is majority minority and it's majority female. It's just unprecedented at this state. And they worked together to get things done. And then I hopped in and got another friend elected as city council, Councilwoman Megan Smith. She was 35 years old. She ran against a 30-year incumbent, and we wanted a runoff. And I got another woman elected county council, another person. And I was just so excited about all of these young people and these women that were stepping up, it was like, I found it, right? I'm going to be the woman behind the woman. We're going to get all these women in.
And you're the next one, right?
And now here I am running. But the bigger part was this was mostly nonpartisan level, right? We have to shift this energy up into our partisan politics. And so I had the opportunity to run for chair of our local Democratic Party. I actually had 48 hours to get a campaign together, and we show up and we swept the convention. And it's been an act of community building and staying focused every day since. And part of that is creating a pipeline for other candidates. So that's what we've been working on, and building the infrastructure for folks to run this year. And so all along the way, we have been identifying folks to run for state house seats and congressional. And lo and behold, we have 9 candidates on the ballot from Spartanburg County this year. It's never happened in history. 7 of them are women. 6 of us are contesting extreme Republican incumbents. And I found myself at the top of the ticket. We have been preparing to meet this moment for over 2 years. And it's an honor to be at the top of that, but that is how you do it. Because if I can be an inspiration for even one other woman to run in this community, then I've done my job.
So when we talk about balancing the state, we obviously know that the state is not ruby red anymore. Things are changing, new people are coming in. There's a lot of young voters that are excited to see change in their community. What do you want to tell those young voters?
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're excited. I want you to know that there is a space for you to get engaged. And quite frankly, don't wait on somebody else. Create your own. I mean, that now is the moment, right? First of all, there's so many campaigns to work on right now. Go to SpartanburgDemocrats.com, contact me, contact Estefania, she can connect you in. There's so much opportunity to support local candidates in this moment. There's also a moment to really get civically engaged. So start showing up at your city council meetings. Start showing up at your county council meetings. Start showing up at your student council meetings at your universities. Create the mobilization yourself. We've got folks locally, coalitions to help build that construct around it. But we're waiting for you. Like, we want y'all to get involved so much. There's just such an opportunity to propel forward right now. And I think mobilization in the youth around politics has been missing from the upstate. So we see university chapters popping up. We've got our young Dems in Spartanburg County that are building at an extraordinary pace. But we need that windfall right now. And I think the top of the ticket is certainly, I'd love to hear from y'all, exciting younger voters right now. But politics has been complicated since the dawn of time, and the most complicated during your lifetimes. I mean, it's just the honest to God truth. I'm just excited that there's hope right now, and I hope you've got an election that you can really sink your teeth into, because going another cycle without that just means that we are at risk of losing you. That self-actualization, the self-mobilization, like, where do you want to get involved? Show up and start plugging in. Don't wait for somebody to ask you, right? Like, raise your hand and do it right now. And if you can't find a space that works for you, create your own. Because there's so much good work that needs to be done.
Well said from an entrepreneur herself. Create your own space.
Do you have any last remarks, anything that you want to say to our audience?
I'll say this. I believe in the upstate communities more than I believe in anything else. I moved home, put my roots back down, because I saw so much promise in this community that raised me. And it's exciting. Every day is exciting around here. We just have to take that same momentum and energy and respect into our partisan politics. We have to. And I want to see more women stepping up. I want to see more community members of color. I want to see more of our Hispanic community. Representation matters, but we've got to start right now. And we need everybody to come out and vote like your life depends on it this year.
Because it does.
It's all at stake, and nothing is for certain. Not one single race from the top all the way down. This isn't the year to stay home.
And Kathryn, where can our people find you if they want to ask questions, know any updates on your political campaign, or just any socials that you want to showcase?
So KathrynForCongress.com is my website. I'm on all the socials I have the bandwidth for right now: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and Threads, and certainly TikTok. Our local Democratic Party office has information. We're always looking for volunteers for all the campaigns. We're always looking for people to fold in. I would love to hear from you. We're going to have opportunities in the community to engage in person over the next couple of months. But more importantly, help me spread the word, y'all, right? I'm the underdog candidate in this. The more people talking about it, the more people sharing information about it, the more people that know now that they have a choice on the ballot in District 4 for this congressional seat, the more opportunities to get engaged early.
So what would you like to tell our Latino community about you, your campaign, and what they should do in November?
I actually think one of the biggest opportunities, not just for mobilization, but for long-term strategic movement, is our Latino community. And I think there's a real moment to show up and say, this is what we want from our electeds. Mm-hmm. This is what we need in our communities. I want to hear your voices. I want to hear your challenges. I want to celebrate your successes. But I want this community to be a huge part of how we're moving forward, because you are a huge part of the upstate. And I truly believe that. And I think we, as a population in the upstate, are not as inclusive sometimes, or even some folks need to know how to engage. And I think what y'all are doing helps everyone, but lifting up those voices is so critical, because all of us want the same thing. We want what's best for our families. We want education and healthcare and opportunities for our children. And that transcends any community, right?
Absolutely.
Mi gente, el sueño americano se está muriendo, pero nosotros lo podemos resucitar. This is Limitless Latina.
Ciao.
Besitos.
Adiós.